that way day after day after day. And now the TV people have turned up. So, here we are. There's no privacy in Speaker's Corner. Why do we object to Islam? Because Islam didn't turn up until the 7th century. There was no Islam before the 7th century. But there were Jews and Christians. Jews and Christians were very common. There was even tribes of Jews and Christians in the land where Muhammad lived. And they had stories and they had traditions. Muhammad came along hoping that he would be accepted as a prophet by the Jews. He hoped that the Jewish people would accept him as a prophet. But unfortunately for him, they rejected him. And so what did he do? He expelled all the Jews out of Medina. There were 3 tribes in Medina. 2 tribes were expelled. The other tribe was massacred. Because ultimately, Islam, built on the foundations of Judaism and Christianity, borrowed stories and characters. It talks about Abraham, Moses. It talks about these people in the Quran. It borrowed the characters of the Judeo-Christian narrative. But then when it was not accepted by the Judeo-Christian narrative, it turned on the Judeo-Christian narrative. Initially, it built its platform on the Judeo-Christian narrative. That's why they claim that they believe in Jesus, they claim that they believe in Muhammad. But once they were rejected, by the Jews and Christians, then they turned against that. And if you read the last chapters of the Quran, they're very anti-Christian, very anti-Jewish. And they give a completely different version of Christianity and the Jews to what we see in the scriptures. For instance, they say that Jesus was not crucified. Now, even amongst non-believers, the fact that Jesus was crucified is an attested, well-believed fact. It's accepted everywhere. It's accepted in Josephus, Tacitus, the Roman records. There are records in the Roman writings of Jesus having been crucified. The Christians were well known to the Romans. But the Quran in its...
also well known for making up lies.
The Quran in Surah 4:157 denies that Jesus was crucified. So the Muslims have to rewrite history. Basically, they have to rewrite the historical narrative. They have to try and impose their narrative on history, a rewriting of history. So we have this very clear message from Jesus. Jesus walked on the earth. Jesus predicted his own death. In Mark 8, Mark 9, Mark 10, Jesus predicted his own death.
We're better than ancient Greek, Dionysus, for example.
Now, my friend here is saying
well,
that...
let me say it. And then,
it's a well-known... but they're not the same. That doesn't
obviously the same story. They've changed the names of the characters.
But the difference is we have clear historical... If anyone's read Luke's Gospel, I suggest to anybody, you go home and you read Luke's Gospel. Luke's Gospel is a very clear narrative. It says who was king, it says who was governor, it says who was the high priest, who was all the ruling people in that day. It's very clear. In fact, it's a historical account of what happened. And we don't just have one historical account, we have 4 historical accounts, plus the secular accounts.
2 of them are not historical.
They are historical.
Luke are probably by the same person.
No, we know that they weren't written by the same.
Well, let me give you an example from Matthew and Luke. According to them, Jesus wanted to be tempted, so he goes into the wilderness for 40 days. Doesn't say exactly why he wanted it, it's just he wanted to be tempted, so he spent 40 days. And lo and behold, the devil tempted him and says, why don't you turn the stones into bread? Which wouldn't be too much of a problem, because it would be, multitude of but Jesus doesn't want to do that. He takes him up the tower, so when they jump out, he takes the top of the city behind the house and all the people in the world. He said, if you bow down before me, all this will be yours. Now the devil has obviously forgotten that he was the Son of God. It doesn't make it. He's already got there anyway. But the main thing is, this story, you've been reading ancient Greek mythology long before Christianity came along. Several hundred years. I mean, in ancient Greek mythology, Pan took Zeus to the top of a high mountain, said precisely the same. If you dare bow down before me, all this will be yours. You've got the same story even in the Atheism. They changed the name of the characters, but the story is far earlier than the New Testament goes. The same stories. And there are many examples like this. I mentioned Dionysus. Dionysus was...
I don't have all the literature on them, but I've actually looked into them. They're not as similar as you think. And the problem with your argument is, you're saying that these are similar stories. That doesn't make, even if there were some,
there are millions of the names of the characters.
There are millions of stories. There are millions of stories. That doesn't make the story of Jesus
I'm talking about
wrong.
the particular one that you find in the New Testament, 55 Venus. And most of these you can find in mythology and other cultures. But we know not only the Greek culture, they're far older than the New Testament versions of them.
But that's not what Jesus is saying, is it? That's not what happened to Jesus.
There's no historical evidence for Jesus.
No historical evidence. What, you don't believe Jesus existed?
There's no evidence for it.
So he says there's no evidence for the existence
No
of
reliable
Jesus.
evidence. No. I mean, you keep putting the New Testament, but I mean, we don't practically know.
So how come the Romans clearly testified to the fact that Jesus existed? The Romans, not the Jews. How come even, and of course in the Jews,
took on Christianity,
but they mentioned,
very nearly wasn't Christianity.
but they mentioned, the Romans mentioned Jesus. They mentioned that he died on the cross.
No.
They do. Josephus mentions it. Tacitus mentioned it.
Well, okay, we'll do Josephus first. I'm taking this. The references to Jesus in Josephus have long been known to be a false forgery. They're
not true.
competent.
Some of it.
There are
Some of
copies
it is.
of
Some of it is.
Josephus still in existence, which don't have this passage in. The older you get, the less references.
Well, I understand the issue, but that doesn't completely negate the testimony of Josephus.
Now to be a forgery. And the Christians at the time were forging documents left, right, and centre. They made a forgery of Constantine's will, for Christ's sake, to try and prove that he'd left
Whose will?
They made a forgery of Constantine's will to try and prove that he...
Constantine. Well, Constantine wasn't around until 300 years later.
Oh, well, that's right. I'm talking about the early Christians.
Well, that's 300 years later. We're talking about the testimony of
I'm
Jesus.
talking about the early Christians.
We're talking the accounts of Jesus. We're not talking 300 years later.
This is another story. I'm making the point that they were forging documents.
So this man has got a conspiracy theory. He thinks it's all a conspiracy.
It's certainly not
So
conspiracy.
he
It's well
says,
recorded in...
So he's saying Matthew, Mark, Luke, John, James, Paul, Peter, Jude, Nicodemus, all these people conspired.
Well, most of them we don't know practically
conspired
nothing about.
to make up this story.
We don't know when
but you have
wrote.
another problem. Did the prophets? You have another problem, my friend. Let me listen to me.
The only
You have
problem I've got
another
today is
problem. You have another problem because Jesus was prophesied in the Old Testament.
Oh,
it was clearly
Absolute
predicted
rubbish.
in the Old Testament that Jesus would be born in Bethlehem. And his life, how he would die. Even on the last day of his life, Jesus fulfilled 40 prophecies. Now these were all written before Jesus was born. So what you're saying is that not only was the conspiracy with all the followers of Jesus, somehow the prophets of the Old Testament also conspired. And they didn't even know what was going to happen. So somehow they correctly guessed what was going to happen and wrote it down and conspired against this story. It's just too, it takes more, for you to believe what you believe takes an awful amount of, I admire your faith. I admire your faith. You have a huge amount of faith.
I have no faith.
To believe in this big conspiracy theory takes more knowledge and more faith than it does to study the scriptures and the accounts in the Bible and in the book. The book is very clear.
My friend,
it says
You can study the stories of Noddy and become an expert on that, but it doesn't make them true.
So the Jews were expecting a Messiah. They were all expecting a Messiah. And Jesus came and he fulfilled those scriptures. He fulfilled those prophecies from the Old Testament. So how do you explain? And we have copies. We have copies of Isaiah. We have copies of the book of Isaiah from before the time of Christ. So we actually have these prophecies. In the Dead Sea Scrolls, we have the book of Isaiah written from before the days of Jesus, clearly saying that he would die, that not a bone in his body would be broken, that they would pierce his hands and feet, that he would be whipped, that he would be fed vinegar, that he would be buried with the rich in his grave, that he would be tortured, that he would be flogged, that he would be rejected. We have all these prophecies in the Old Testament. Read Psalm 22 and Psalm 53. You will see these prophecies there. Unfortunately, I had a big list of all these prophecies. I didn't bring it with me today, but we had all those prophecies in there. And so that is very, how do you explain the fact that Jesus, because to be the Messiah, you had to fulfill the prophecies of the Old Testament. You couldn't just turn up and say, well, I'm the prophet, I'm the Messiah. There had to be some validation. There had to be a validation for who you were from the scriptures. So you had to be able to fulfill the scriptures, the scriptural writings. You had to be born in Bethlehem, for start.
Rubbish, absolute.
So that's where Jesus was born. Many prophecies Jesus had to fulfill.
We don't know who wrote them, we don't know when they were written, and if you read them, they're not what you claim they are at all.
Why don't you like Jesus? I'm going to ask you a personal question. Why don't you like Jesus?
How can I like something?
Why don't you like Jesus?
Well, let me answer you. How can I like or dislike something that doesn't exist?
It doesn't exist.
There's a couple of Jewish gentlemen over here.
Well, go and have a chat with them.
Let's get them over here and tell you were criticising.
So you want to bring, now he wants to bring Jewish people over.
Only because you mentioned their
now
book.
the Jews, they're modern Jews and they rejected the Messiah. So
you claim there's lots of references to Jesus in their book. So let's get that.
They reject the Messiah, my friend.
I'm sorry?
They reject the Messiah.
Well, yes, which is...
So they're hardly the people that I would go to for an opinion, am I? But all the early Christians, all the early Christians were Jews.
No, they weren't. A lot were. They were very popular.
To start with, the only people who were Christian, the 12 disciples and the early followers of Jesus, the very early ones, were all Jewish. Okay? So they accepted Jesus. Now, because they don't accept him...
Many early, in the beginning of Christianity, there were many people who didn't accept Jesus. I mean, to say, they're all Christian, that's nonsense.
No, the early people who accepted Jesus were Jewish. And if you read the narrative of the story, you'll see that it was the Jews who conspired against him because of your very thing that you mentioned earlier, religion. They wanted to protect their religion, and Jesus came along. Jesus came along, and he upset their religion.
Jesus didn't come along. Jesus is a figment of your imagination. There's no historical evidence for it. And all the stories about all these New Testament, not all, but most of the New Testament stories
can we beg to disagree?
Well, if you want, but I mean...
Well, I disagree with you, okay?
Well, that's not an answer.
I disagree with you, okay? You're just going to argue all day, but I disagree with you, okay? So you're welcome to your opinion. You're welcome to your opinion. If that's what you want to believe, you are free. You are free to believe it. You are free to live in your ignorance. I give you complete freedom.
Thank you very much.
To be ignorant.
And your religion gives you freedom
to do what? To do what? To make Britain great. That's what made this country great in the first place.
What made this country great?
Christianity.
Oh, Christianity.
Yes. The Factory Acts, the abolition of slavery, the unions, all of these things were founded by Christians.
Christianity doesn't have a very good
the hospitals.
Letting people have free speech.
All these things were founded by Christianity. Alfred the Great was a great man of God. But unfortunately, what's happened now, secular humanism has crept in, and also, because there's no religion, the vacuum has been filled by Islam.
Too much bloody religion, that's the problem. Your religion is very little different to the Jewish religion, to the Muslim religion. You know, you all believe in some kind of magic man who lives in the sky.
A magic man.
You know, if we leave all the problems to him, he'll somehow solve them for us. Well, he won't. He doesn't.
He solved my problems at 15. At 15, he says he won't solve your problems. At 15, I was on drugs, living on the streets, and God spoke to me and changed my life. God actually came and radically changed my life. He says, religion won't fix your problems. Listen, I would be dead. I would have been dead at 18. So this is a nonsense. I have seen numerous people's lives turned around by the power of God and the power of Jesus Christ. I've seen people who are alcoholics instantly taken off alcohol, instantly become sober and be free of alcohol. I have seen people healed by the power of God. And this man says it won't do you any good. This is a nonsense. But I tell you, there's one place where you're really going to do you a lot of good, and that's on the day you die. That's when it's really going to do you some good, because that day, it says there's a day appointed for everyone to die, then the judgment. So on that day, you will be standing before God. Whether you ignore him or not, you will have to face God sometime. You're running out of time, my friend. You're like you're on a train heading for a destination. You will get to that destination. I guarantee that you'll get to your destination.
Good.
But on that day, you, like every single person here, will no longer be able to put the blinkers over their eyes and pretend that God doesn't really exist. They will have to face the fact that there really, truly, absolutely is a God who is going to hold everybody to account.
What's the value of your guarantee? You said a moment ago you guarantee. I don't know you, but what's the value of your guarantee?
So you think you're not going to die?
I didn't know.
Well, no, that's the guarantee, is that you're going to die.
Well, no, you said you
the guarantee is that you are going to die.
I know I'm going to die.
There you are. So you're guaranteed
we all
to die and face God.
No, you just fudged the subject. You said you guarantee there's going to be a judgment day or whatever.
Well,
Not that I'm going to die.
I do.
And you fudged
I guarantee it to you.
You fudged it.
I guarantee it to you.
I said, what's the value of your guarantee?
I guarantee it to you.
That doesn't mean a thing to me.
Okay, that's fine.
Are you saying that God has got to...
Because I would sooner believe God than man.
I guarantee that tree's going to fall over on your head in a moment.
I would sooner believe
What does that
God.
mean?
God saved me, you never saved me. I've never met you before. God has saved me from the gutter. You've never done anything for me. So I put my faith in God, not you. Okay?
Well, how did he save you from the gutter?
Because at 15 I was on drugs on the streets.
So why did God allow you to get into that state?
Because I rejected God at 13.
But I rejected God.
I did what you did. I became an atheist.
I rejected God long ago. He hasn't done anything to me.
I became a real atheist. A lot of these people here are making...
I went to church.
Nobody is born a Christian.
Went to church, went to Sunday school, all that. Then I actually discovered...
doesn't make you a Christian.
I discovered science and started to
think.
think.
That doesn't make you a Christian.
And I started to think.
Right?
Yeah, and I rejected it because it was just absolute all bullshit.
That's your choice.
Anyway, you still have...
But God didn't put me in the gutter. Why didn't he put me in the gutter?
Because you didn't actually practice your
Or
atheism.
was I just lucky?
You didn't
He
practice...
put you in the gutter, but not me.
You didn't practice
That's
your
not
atheism.
fair, is it?
God, no, he was coming here today to argue with you.
I actually became an anarchist and a rebel and a complete nightmare, because I actually followed the atheist philosophy through. And I said, well, there's no right or wrong, there's no good or bad.
That's not the atheist philosophy. The atheist philosophy is just that there is no God.
But if you're going to be consistent to that view, if you're going to be consistent to
God doesn't make right or wrong.
If you're going to be consistent to that,
I know what right or wrong is.
You have to reject morality. So who's your standard for right and wrong? Where do you get your standard from? What makes your standard right?
It's something that's taught to me by my parents, by society in general.
And where do they get it from? Where do they get their standard from?
I don't need a God to keep me on the rails.
Where do they get their standard from?
Passed on from their parents.
Where do they get their
Society and
from?
groups do it.
Where do they get it from?
It actually makes sense.
How do you know that some things are wrong and some things are right?
Oh, it's so clear.
No, it's not.
It's wrong for me to walk up and kick you. Surely, if you know that. It's
It's
wrong.
not wrong for an animal to do that. Why do animals
We're
do
not
it?
talking about animals. We're
Oh,
talking
so
about
you're
human
different to
beings.
an animal. So
Why
you're admitting
keep
you're not an
changing
animal.
the subject?
That's a good start. You're now admitting that you're not just an animal.
We've
So-
evolved from animals.
So you're not just an animal.
No, we've evolved
So
from
you're.
animals.
So why are you different to an animal? What makes you different?
Because
we
we've
are
evolved.
animals, aren't we? We
What
are
makes
species.
you
Further
different?
on.
Of course we're
What
a
makes you
species of
different?
animal.
Because we can
Now,
organise ourselves.
We got two atheists disagreeing. This one says, of
we can
course
organise
we're a
ourselves.
species
I'm
of
answering
animal,
your question.
and this one is saying we're not. We are a species, not a species of
Because
animal.
it makes us different from an animal because we can think further and we can organise ourselves
Can you?
to create societies around us.
And we can organise ourselves to fight and kill and destroy each other as well.
Of course we can. The good, bad comes with the good.
You see, morality, good and evil, is there. I mean, you have to.
Well,
Yes, it's there. You're right. You don't need a
also have
religion.
a sense of good and bad.
Thousands of years ago, there was a psalmist called David, and he wrote in the psalm, he said, "The fool has said in his heart, there's no God." The fool. He said it was foolish.
Well, it's nonsense. He was foolish to say
And
it.
you know what the word agnostic means? It means ignorant. That's what it comes from.
No, it
Gnosis
doesn't.
is
It doesn't mean
knowledge.
that at all.
No, no, it doesn't
It
mean that at all.
literally
Wrong,
means-
wrong.
And categorically,
It's
it
just-
literally means without God.
No, it doesn't.
Yes, it does.
Atheist does. Agnostic, I said. Agnostic means
Agnostic
without
is
knowledge,
sitting on the fence.
which is where you get the word ignorant from.
Oh, you're making
So
it up
if-
as you go along.
So,
Just
so
like all your
if
mates.
you want to deny the existence of God, you are free
Well, I'm
to
asking
do
you
it.
to give us some evidence for him.
Eh? This is all. You've got loads of
That's
evidence.
not evidence for anything. That could be evidence from a
that's not
command.
evidence for anything.
How's that evidence for a God?
Well,
Where
it's
did
not-
God
it's not
come from?
evidence for anything.
Tell us
It's
where
evidence
God
for life.
came from. Who created God?
Well, let me just give you a bit of my history. I was brought up by a science teacher. I was taught science. I was
Oh,
taught
dear, that's
evolution.
never a good start, is
I had a very good education in evolutionary theory and everything. And so on the basis
So
of
you
that,
won't have any problem
on the
answering the
basis,
question then?
can I speak? You're butting in.
Try. You're
On
not
the
doing very
basis
well so
on
far.
the basis of that, I rejected God.
Right.
On the basis of scientific knowledge and evidence, I became an atheist.
But the question was, where did God come from?
I'm speaking.
Well, you're
So,
rambling off
so
at a
I
tangent.
know what you're talking about. I
Well,
know
will you
about
answer the question, please?
this argument.
Will you answer the question?
But then after 2 years of being a true atheist and really believing there was no God and living my life as if there was no God, I found myself in the gutter.
Right, now tell
That's
us,
another
please,
matter.
where did God come
That's
from?
where the rejection of God leads people.
You
That's where it
obviously had a
leads.
flawed character.
That's where it leads
You found
society.
yourself in the gutter.
That's where it leads people.
No, it didn't lead me to it.
Because we
It
see
actually led me to a better life.
that when what you do instead of worshipping God, secular humanism is where man believes he is God.
No,
And he puts
I
himself
don't
in the
think I'm
place
God.
of God.
No, you're putting words in
And
our
he puts
mouth.
himself in the place of God. So he's the
No,
one who
no,
decides
I'm not
what
God.
good
The
and
The
evil
question
is.
was, where did God come
So
from?
man now has taken the place of God, and he is the one who's saying what is good and evil, and this is why we're in such a mess.
No, I'm not God and I'm not a sinner, as you'd like me to think that I am.
So you're perfect.
No, I didn't say that. I didn't, but I said I'm not a sinner.
So you're perfect.
But you'd like to use the old
So you're
carrot and the
perfect.
stick.
Are you
Heaven and hell.
So are you perfect?
I never said I was perfect.
So
what are you?
You argue like
What
a
am I?
5-year-old.
I'm just a
Imperfect.
natural human being.
So if you're
I
imperfect-
love other human beings.
So
I love
you're
the
imperfect.
world. I respect the world.
So
I
if
don't
you-
need a God to lead me to do all
Well,
of
I've
this.
got another.
I
I've
can
got another
think for
question.
myself.
If you don't believe in God, why are you spending so much time arguing about it?
Because people
Why
like
are
you
you,
Because
why are you
I was-
arguing
I
about
was
something that
scrolling
doesn't
by
exist?
and I heard you try to
Methinks
convince
thou
people there
doth
is a God.
protest too much.
Well,
I think you protest
no,
too much, really.
When
I mean,
you
you're making
when
a
you
big
can't give an
fuss.
honest answer to a question.
You're making a big
Nobody's
fuss about
protesting
something
too
you don't
much.
believe in.
But
You
you
don't
answer
believe
the
it
question I asked you half an hour ago. Where did God come from? What was the Creator doing before He started creating?
I don't know.
When there was nothing to
Ah,
do, nothing
Because
No.
I am not God. I accept my
Well, you must be pretty
limitations.
close. I mean, come on.
I accept my limitations. Okay, my friend, where did the universe come from?
Well,
Well,
A singularity.
well,
Well, I asked
well,
Vastly
where did the
simple.
universe
It came
come
from
from?
a
vastly
singularity.
Where did it come from?
From the Big
Where
Bang.
did everything
The Big
come
Bang,
from?
a
Big Bang.
singularity.
Oh, where did all that
Well,
come
led
from?
on from the Big Bang.
So everything came out
I
of
don't know
nothing.
what you need to do. If you want an answer
So
to that
everything
question,
came out of nothing.
Can I
Is that
ask
what you
you?
believe in?
Yep.
Can I answer you
You've got
without
it.
you shut me
You've got
down?
it.
If you want
And
an
it's
answer
being explained now.
a quite complex scientific question, you need to ask a scientist who
I need to ask a scientist about it.
who deals with that kind of subject. I do not. But
So you don't know. So you're standing here telling me I'm wrong, and you don't know where everything
I do know that there's an event about 14.5 million years
ago. So
ago.
how do you do that? How do you tell other people they're wrong when you don't know yourself?
We're not taking
This
these.
is what I said, ignorance. Now I do know there's a God because he stepped into my life and he changed my life.
My friend,
Okay?
it's not,
What's your views about science?
The Big Bang is not a secret.
I've seen
Now,
stuff.
do you deny that
What's
the
your
Big Bang
views about
occurred?
science?
No,
Science,
answer.
as far as it goes, true science is okay as far as it goes, but much science isn't real
Do
science.
you deny that the
true
Big Bang
science?
happened? Do you deny that the Big Bang happened?
I don't know.
You don't know. Well, don't criticise me for saying I don't know.
I mean, there was obviously a point where everything began, and it's clear from Scripture.
You've got it.
Well,
It's
what
clear
if
from
there's a point where
Scripture.
everything began? Tell us about how God began.
Well, how does Scripture know about this?
Is God a result of the Big Bang, or was God there before the Big Bang?
Well, God obviously existed before everything, or he wouldn't be God, would he? By
Well, where did he
definition.
come from then?
So where
By
would he come
very
from?
How did
definition.
God come into existence?
By definition.
No.
By
Answer the bloody
definition,
question.
God
You're
has
like
to
an
be the
eel, you're
first
slither
cause.
about it.
That's the definition of God.
Answer, please.
That's the
What
definition
is
of
the
God.
definition of God?
That he is the first cause.
How do you know it was
That
a
might
he?
be your definition.
That's the definition.
Well, whose definition?
Otherwise, he's not God, is he?
Whose definition?
He's a
Well, how
created
can that
being.
be
Whose
possible?
God, by
definition?
definition, is uncreated.
Whose definition?
Well, how did he come into being then?
Whose definition?
Well, I've just explained
Did
to
he
you.
grow
didn't
on a
come
tree?
into- So, because you can't. Okay, so where's the end of space? Let me ask you a
You
question.
say according.
Let me ask you something about something that you know about the natural world. Where does space end?
It doesn't.
I am not a scientist who
It doesn't.
deals
Can
in
you
space.
explain to me how something can have no end?
Well,
Well, can you
listen
explain to me why? Go on.
You
Listen,
ramble on
I
and
listen
on
to
and
your
on and on
question.
without
Can you
end.
explain to
I-
me how something
Can
has
you
no end?
explain to me why everything has to have an end?
No, listen, you answer the I asked you a
No, no.
question. Can you explain to me how space never ends?
No, I can't. I can't.
There you go. So you have a limited ability to understand, same as me.
But
So
you
you're more
have a
limited.
firm belief in this thing
Your
that you call
limited
God.
ability.
So-
Instead of rolling up its sleeve and trying to find out
But I
these
do
things,
believe
as
that-
science does, give me a chance. All it does is take the easy way out and say, "Oh, we don't know. Must have been God."
But I do.
How lazy!
I'm not lazy.
It is lazy. Of course, it's
Well,
I
lazy
believe
thinking.
it's not
dishonest,
lazy
it's
at
not-
all. I
it's
It's
believe
not
dishonest and
dishonest.
lazy. Roll up your sleeves, join the scientists, and try and find out
I
the
was
one
brought
all
up on
things.
science, my friend.
Hey?
I was brought up on
Oh,
science.
clearly not.
Rubbish.
I was.
My friend, you would
My
be
mother
coming
was
out
a
with
science
rubbish,
If you
would I?
understood science, you wouldn't be standing on that.
No,
on
because
Anyway.
science says, right, there is information.
Science says science has
information.
a vast range of
My
subjects.
my
Can't say
nephew
science
worked
says
on the
this,
Human
that, or the other.
Genome Project at Cambridge. Science says, right, you need information to produce something.
What
DNA
was
is
the creator
information.
doing, please, before he started
DNA
creating?
is information, right? You need information. You can't, if you took a whole load of components, right, a load of soup, stuck it in a bowl, it would stay like that. It's only the DNA that
Got
tells
your
it
friend
which
back.
order to go it together to create life.
You've got it.
DNA is a code. It's information.
No dispute. So what's the point you're trying to make?
Well, I'm saying that where does information come from? Information
Well, we don't get any information from you.
Information
you.
implies
Listen,
information implies intelligence.
Your
Information
friend
implies
is back.
intelligence.
No information. No, not intelligence.
I'm going to move over there because this gentleman obviously wants to talk here. And I want to go there. How's he going to follow me now? You see, this is what I said earlier. Muslims don't believe in freedom. They just want to hassle me. No. Because they don't want me to speak. They have to follow me. So I'm going to go over there. Let's see if he believes in freedom.
He's talking.
Come on.
My friend,
Okay,
he's
I would like to
talking
go over
public
here.
memory. He doesn't need to-
Content over everything from your melody.
God, man, say it straight. Man, don't listen to BBC. Man, don't listen to ITV. Listen. Man, don't listen to BBC.
People in general are very different.
I don't even listen to Sky YG.
There are some things that usually function the same
Man,
way,
don't listen to BBC.
but there are many
Man, don't
differences
listen to
between,
ITV.
especially between them. They function internally in a different way, and coincidentally, not